Welcome one, welcome all, welcome near, welcome far. Welcome to the world's greatest sports podcast.
Burr.
Somebody said podcast. It's that time of year again, fellas. Games are being played.
Yay.
Games
Real
are
quick,
being played.
I completely didn't update the intro video for this week's title, so we're off to a great start, by the way.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice. We can't edit that out either. So
No, because we're live. It is
I
what
mean
it is.
it's all good. It's part of the experience. Before we jump into it, let's shout out our sponsors, the Red Lady Rum Punch, the official beverage of the Somebody Said podcast. Sip it, pop it, drink it, enjoy it. Also, we are brought to you by Window to Wall Solutions, where they build a dream home for a reality price. From the trap to the top, they got you. We
Oh,
doing this?
we are.
Oh, all right.
We are.
We ain't got the drop this week.
Nah, we have to wait on that.
How's that gonna work? Like, how do we get the drops into these live videos, or is it just can we plug them?
Yeah, we can. We got to sort it out. We got some homework to do. We're gonna figure it out. We're working out the kinks, ironing
Okay.
out the wrinkles. I
Okay.
feel like we're a college football team, and it's week 0, and it's like, yeah, you've been in camp, but until you get them live bullets, you still got wrinkles to iron out. You know what I'm saying? We need a tune-up game.
Why
Sounds
does
like
that
a
look
shot.
like a direct? Why does that feel like a jab?
No, it's not a jab at
Not-
all. I think it actually will play into the conversation we're probably going to have. The fact that
it's a jab to set up
we
the
need to iron
hook.
out wrinkles. Oh man,
It's a jab.
Play
It's
the
a
victim
slight
and you
jab.
will be the victim.
All right.
Play the victim and you'll be the victim, man.
Well, Breeze got his Miami gear on, so that only means one thing. It's week 1. It's game week for the Miami Hurricanes. It's a lot of big games coming up this week. College football is in its full effect. We had week 0 last week. We'll go ahead and recap that game. Pump was on site. Didn't get no footage at all, but we did get footage of you lit on national television. So Pump, before we jump into the game and the breakdown, talk about that experience first. Just going to Ireland and getting that kind of experience.
Oh man, as a city, Dublin was fantastic. Don't owe me nothing, man. Super easy to get around. People are crazy nice. It's amazing like how many FSU fans like legit turned out for that game. Like the streets of Dublin were just packed with FSU. The weird thing about it is, of course, it's not two global programs. Like in the States, everybody knows what Florida State is, right? So over there, you would actually see a lot of merchandise that just said Florida versus Georgia. So like the last part of those names meant nothing to them. There is no Florida State, there is no Georgia Tech, nothing like that. So when people were asked like, oh, what team are you? I'm like, Florida State. Like, oh, Florida. I'm like, no, those are two totally different things. So yeah, so that part was cool, but yeah, Dublin as a whole, man, it was cool. If you ever fly to Dublin, okay, take a direct flight. Do not get connectors. Do not fly through Madrid. I'm sure it's a beautiful city. I don't think I ever want to go back to Madrid in my life.
What happened in Madrid?
Luggage didn't get sent to Dublin the first time, so I actually had no clothes. Had to shop at TK Maxx. They don't have TJ Maxx. They have TK Maxx over there.
TK, turn it up.
Shout out to TK.
Maxx. Went to the Jameson distillery. That was dope. Got some distillery edition whiskey. So we had to check it. So now that we knew kind of how the process works in Madrid, we decided to go ahead and check the bag. So we had to go to baggage claim, get the bag, recheck it so it would go to the States with us. The bag never came from Dublin. It was just stuck in Madrid. So we ended up missing the flight. So I guess on this international flight, you got to check in or at least get your boarding passes an hour and 15 minutes ahead of time. So they kicked me and 12 off the flight because we didn't have boarding passes,
tough.
even though we were checked in to the flight. It was a debacle, man.
Hey man, and I kind of wish.
Like the game.
Yeah, I was gonna say I kind of wish the game would have went better for you based on the experience you had away from the game. We did catch you on national television. We paused it, rewinded it, and you was lit. You know,
Super lit. Super lit. Look, somewhere around the third quarter, I don't remember the third quarter at all. Right.
Mm.
And I remember catching glances of the fourth quarter. And then the next thing I know, I feel Herm slapping me on my shoulder say, "Hey, cuz man, we about to lose this bitch. Let's get out of here."
Speaking of the game, I think a lot of people, not that everybody was drunk, but a lot of people would say they don't remember most of this game because if you look at the game, it was 14 possessions total, 7 by each team. It was a pretty fast game. Florida State only got the ball once in the fourth quarter, and I believe 3 times in the second half. So it's funny you mentioned you don't remember much of that game. It's it kind of was a blur, um,
Mhm.
but we are Seminole fans. We were high on this team going into the season. To start the season out with a 24-21 loss to Georgia Tech, unranked. We're number 10 in the country. We got to talk about it, Pump. Let's let's break this game down real quick. What did you see up close that affected the outcome of this game for Florida State?
In all honesty, it felt like Florida State was a little too complacent on what they had as far as talent. We know we have talent. We know we got some good guys. We've had great practices, yada, 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 and we're playing Georgia Tech. I felt like they slept walked into that game knowing or thinking that at any point they could just cut it on and off, right? If they need to go, get some yardage, we can get it. If we need to get this stop, we can get it. And it felt for the first 3.5 quarters, the game plan never changed, which is weird to me because you keep seeing like, Mike, this ain't working. Mike, this ain't working. You're trying to run the ball. This ain't working. And, I was asking her, I'm like, is that an indictment on Mike not trusting DJ yet? Or are they just so stubborn that they want this run game to be the bread and butter of this team that they're just going to keep on doing it, keep on beating their head against the wall until it finally works, and it never worked. And then
Right.
when you finally saw that last drive where, DJ marched them down the field, converted 2 4th downs, and they scored and tied the game up, it's like, all right, well, cool. You see that he has the ability to do it if you allow him to do it. But by that time, it was too little too late. And in all honesty, something that we always talk about, battling in the trenches, where you assume that the strength of that Florida State team, especially going to be that defense, is going to be on that defensive line. At least one of the strengths supposed to be that defensive line. Both sides of the ball in the trenches got pushed around by Georgia Tech, right? I think Breeze mentioned, what they return on that offensive line. You could tell they were a cohesive unit that's played together. They know what they're doing, and they're good. They were a good running team last year. So they bullied Florida State in the trenches on offense and defense. And when you saw that happen, it's like Georgia Tech didn't stumble into this win. They honestly played a really, really good ball game. They did exactly what they needed to do to win that game.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, in my notes, the first thing I have is coaching. I was very disappointed in how Mike Norvell approached the game and how they didn't make any adjustments at the half. I thought, once you realize what Georgia Tech was trying to do, which is run the ball and, slowly uh, run out the clock, and Adam Fuller didn't make any adjustments at halftime. If you're claiming you have two of the better corners in the country, force them to cover, play, 8 man in the box, bring up the safeties, force Haynes King to beat you with his arm. And I don't think we ever made that adjustment. I hated the substitutions. It's like they kept rotating guys. You can't get any continuity because if you look at this team, a lot of these guys haven't played with each other. You lost 10 guys to the NFL, so you kind of don't know what kind of team you have until you actually play a real game. Playing against, your teammates for 20 practices or whatever it was in camp, you kind of get familiar with the plays that are being run and all that kind of thing. But when you go up against somebody else, you kind of see what team you actually have. And I think like the coaching staff didn't give this team a fair opportunity to actually get in a rhythm. You saw there was one drive where they subbed out Jeremiah Byers for the other right tackle. I can't get his name right now, but he got bull rushed and it was a sack, even though it was a flag. There was just no consistency with the players. Jalen Lucas, he came out the first 2 touches, he got first downs. We didn't see him touch the ball the rest of the game. You know, Cam Davis, he's going to be a really good back down the stretch, but we didn't see Keziah Holmes touch the ball but once. If I feel like if that play in the flats where Cam Davis drops the ball, Toa Philly catches that and turns that up the field.
It's probably a touchdown. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So substitution for me, coaching. Omar Graham should never see the field ever again in Florida State history. He needs to take off Peter Warrick's number, get 55 or something. Like the man played 30 plus snaps, had 0 tackles. At one point, he was trying to tackle somebody with his back.
So the crazy thing is too, when you were talking about the defensive adjustments, I'm again, sitting there watching it, rewatching it a couple times. The DBs, Zaria and Fentrell, they didn't play a bad game. They
didn't get tested.
They didn't have a chance to get tested. Now there's a couple plays where I'm thinking about Breeze as I'm sitting here and I'm watching the safety play where we know what Shaheed does. There's a few plays where I feel like he was trying to do too much because that second level you weren't going to get anything from him.
Shaheed had 13 tackles.
If your safety is your leading tackler, it's a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That second level was not there at all. So now he's trying to overcompensate. And Devontae Brown.
Breeze, you were right.
All right, bro. Right. And then if you notice, we saw a lot of Conrad Hussey that second half.
And guess what? Guess what? The depth chart came out today, and Conrad Hussey isn't listed as he's listed as the starter.
He's the starter. Yeah. And again, so on that defensive line where, the strength is going to be, that especially that defensive line, that front four, even the depth on it. We didn't see how you pronounce his name? The transfer from Oregon State.
Lola Hay. That's his first name.
Yes, yeah. Lola Hay. Didn't see him that much. Marvin Jones Jr. didn't hear from him, right? Farmer had a decent game. Daryl Jackson, I know he can do better. Didn't have a great game. Patrick Payton felt like he was sleepwalking through most of that game, right? So, if that's going to be the strength and we don't get that kind of production from him, and DJ Lundy, God bless his soul, man. If that's on tape now, right? I don't know what happened or this team that even, Nick Saban praised right ahead of time. It's like, and I don't think that was just for ratings either. Like what Nick Saban said about that team, I don't think it was just for ratings or shock value or whatever. I think he's a good evaluator of talent. But what Florida State was trying to do, or even trying to see how much depth they have and what they can roll out, again, I think that they were so, I don't want to use the word arrogant, but at any time, okay, well, let's see what all our shiny new toys are. I didn't need to see Cam Davis in that game. In all honesty, I think that he's gonna ball out. I didn't need to see him, right? Roy Dale couldn't get into a rhythm. Toa Philly couldn't get into a rhythm. I didn't need to see all the toys, Mike. Right. Go win this game, especially an ACC game. And now we're playing from behind. We're 0-1, cool, but we're also 0-1 in the ACC. That ain't good.
That's such a great point. I felt like the word is arrogant because you took this game lightly and you put the best players on the field and then bring in these freshmen and bring in these guys you want to see. Like, make sure the game is well in hand before you start experimenting with different positions. We started seeing Ja'Kai Douglas touch the ball in the second half. He's one of our better receivers. That 15. I mean, yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I gotta jump in here though, because last week when we previewed this game, we talked about the change from having the go-to, hey, we can just throw jump balls to Keon, to, well, now it's going to be, death by numbers, or, we're going to throw numbers at it, right? It'll be more balanced. It'll be more guys. And I think one of the words that has been probably used more than any other word in having these conversations about college football is depth, right? So if you believe in your depth, yeah, you're going to throw in 2, 3, maybe 4 guys at a spot because in theory, if they all can be effective, then you want them all to get touches. Everybody stays fresh, everybody stays ready to go, and you can just keep rolling them. The problem was none of them were very effective, especially at the running back spot, which I don't think is the running back's issue, and I don't think it was the offensive line's issue either. I think it was a play calling issue. And once Georgia Tech realized, like, wait a minute, they're not going to throw it deep. Okay, we'll just load the box. There's a few stats I want to share in this part of this conversation, but as part of this part of it, after your first drive, 50% of your offensive plays, Georgia Tech had 7 or more guys in the box.
And you didn't adjust.
That literally says we're daring you to throw the ball over the top because we don't think you'll do it, and y'all just didn't do it. Like until you absolutely had to in the fourth, at the last drive, and it's 4th and 7 multiple times, and DJ's got to go make a play. You can't run it then. But Georgia Tech dared y'all to throw the ball, loaded the box, and you just didn't do it.
That was the most shocking thing to me because Mike Norvell, he's still a really good coach. Barring what these Twitter people are saying, they want Mike gone, and they knew he wasn't that guy or whatever, or he can't win without Jordan Travis. People forget he developed Jordan Travis into what he was, but whatever. I think this probably was his worst coaching job thus far. Andy owned it after the game, but I think. I'm sticking with the word that Pump said, arrogance, because you realize what kind of game this was. You realize you're not going to get that many possessions. At that point, throw the depth out the window. Depth is good for down the line in the season. Like the further you get into the season, you have to understand what kind of game you're dealing with here. And when possessions are at a minimum, you have to put the best players out on the field and leave them. You don't need depth in a game like that. You only got 7 possessions. You need the best players out there for those 7 possessions. So I think Mike, he realized that too late, and that 15-play, 84-yard drive, I think it was like a 8-minute drive for that DJU went on. I think Mike kind of gained some confidence in what he can and cannot do. I think he's good at throwing the hitches, the slants. He missed Ja'Kai Douglas on a deep post that he could have walked in for a touchdown. But I think Mike will open it up moving forward, and the depth will play a role still in this season. I just think it wasn't for that game. You didn't need depth for that game. You needed the best players out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, Mike Norvell, it made me question a couple things because again, if I'm sitting there and I'm watching that game and I'm wondering, all right, what is he seeing in practice that he still doesn't really think that DJ has a full grasp of what he wants done in the game, right? Because again, it's like, all right, when our back was against the wall, now he said, okay, let's open it up. Now we have no choice, right? Because again, for the first 3.5 quarters, you're just trying to do the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over until it works. Well, it wasn't working. Right. So I do think that Mike can call a good game because again, when they needed to call and dial up certain stuff, he could do it. He should have just done it, at either the beginning of the third or whatever. Now on the opposite side of the ball, one stat that really did bother me was I think I saw Georgia Tech average 3.5 yards before contact in the rushing game. Before anybody touched them, they averaged 3.5 yards.
So I went back and watched the film, and I know a lot of people are bashing the defensive line because, first of all, Josh Pate went out and said it had to be somebody from inside the program that told that to Pete Thamel. It was NFL scouts that actually came to the practice that, told that to Pete Thamel that this was one of the best D-line in the country. No beat writers were saying this was one of the best D-line in the country. It's the strength of our team, but as far as saying it's the best D-line, the only person that's proven on that D-line really is Patrick Pate. Everybody else, there's a question mark by their name. So for someone inside the program to go out and say that is setting yourself up for failure kind of. And when I went back and watched the film, there were a few times where guys lost their footing and got mauled. that's part of the game. But there were other times where you were holding your block and you needed your linebackers to shoot gaps, and
All
linebackers
right,
weren't
all right.
shooting gaps.
Listen, Georgia Tech was playing on
Okay.
that same field.
Yeah,
I
I was
mean,
gonna say, man,
I
it's
mean,
not like one
you
team was playing on slippery grass and the other team wasn't.
no, I'm
I
not
can't let
blaming
you
on
get out.
no. Yeah, I'm not gonna blame it on the field position, but the way the national media is saying is that our D line just got mauled. And if you actually go back and I watched the film twice. You know, there were plays that we got mauled, but it wasn't the entire game. A lot of that was linebackers not shooting through gaps and not triggering, just sitting and hesitating and not reading their keys. So I'm not gonna just act like they just got mauled the entire game. And
Well, here's the other issue though. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, here's the issue with that is even if guys are holding their block, that's not what you're supposed to be doing, right? You guys pay good NIL money on that defensive line, right? We had some of those conversations. Florida State had to pony up. Every school does. If you want to keep your guys who have talent, the guys who at the top of your roster, you got to pay them in this day and age. Otherwise, they're going to hit the portal and they'll be playing for somebody else. So, you guys did what you had to do. I think it's called the battles in. They cut the checks. They're like, look, we got to field competent teams. We're coming off last year. We want to keep momentum. Cool. Unless, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, Daryl Jackson and Josh Farmer are driving Lambo trucks as college kids, which means they got a nice NIL cut, which means I don't need you holding blocks. I need you being disruptive. I need you getting off of blocks and making plays. The two of them collectively, I don't think had any tackles for loss. Nobody on the defensive line had a sack. For a team that is wanting to do what Florida State wants to do this year and against a Georgia Tech team, that can't happen. It can't. So it could be they thought they could just show up and, hey, we're bigger, we're better. I got a spear on my helmet. They don't. Maybe that's part of it, but that can't fly, right? And I think we all think this team is going to be good, and I'm not going to flush the toilet on them on one game, even as a Miami fan. But I'm looking at that and I'm like, all right, like, are they going to wake up at some point? And then now, and I said this in a couple of my group chats, I think next week we'll see what this team really is. Yeah. Fine. You went out week 0, maybe you felt a little bit entitled. Maybe you thought last year's accomplishments would carry you this year. That ain't how it works. All right, fine. You got your mulligan. Go out and look dominant against the Boston College team, who is, again, at best, middle of the pack in the conference and not supposed to be anything special, especially in the trenches.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think this next week is going to be the test because, one thing that we were talking about, or I was talking about with a few people, was I actually do like Haynes King as a quarterback for what he does in college, right? He's not. I don't think he's going to ever be an NFL quarterback. He can't throw the ball. I force you to throw the ball, but for what he does and how he affects the game with his legs, well, you did see that, right, in the Georgia Tech Florida State game. So now here we're about to play Boston College. Castellanos got off last year, right? He's a very mobile quarterback. So now, again, that's going to be a great test. It's almost like replaying last week's game over again, right? You got another mobile quarterback. He's not going to light you up, through the air. Can your defensive line, can your front seven do what they need to do? At this point, I don't trust anything that comes out of Randy Shannon's bag.
Hey, man, I told y'all about Randy Shannon years ago, man.
There's nothing that I trust. There's nothing that I trust. I mean, again, I saw things from Blake Nicholson,
I like Blake.
Sean Murphy. Okay, it feels like Florida State missed on, well, except for Roy Dale, it feels like they missed on some of their Alabama transfers. It kind of made me think about what Breeze said. It's like, all right, yeah, you had Bama, but if it was easy for them to let them go, maybe he really wasn't that good. And maybe they're not. But to what you were saying, Uncle, about that front four, it was easy last year when Patrick Payton wasn't going to get majority of the looks because he had Jared Verse on the other side. Right? Yeah. And Braden Fisk was eating up everything in the middle, and you had Fabo, and then all of a sudden, then they could swap out, and Jordan Farmer came in to give Braden Fisk a spell after Braden Fisk took on every double team that he could, and he's tiring out them boys up front, right?
Right.
And I don't think between Marvin Jones and Patrick Payton, one thing about Jared Verse, he wasn't gonna get bullied on that offensive line, right? You
Mhm.
done seen plenty of times
Yeah.
him bull rushing, just knocking guys back. Patrick Payton's not that kind of guy, and right now they don't have any of those guys on DN where Jared Verse could set an edge. Jared Verse wasn't getting bullied
Yeah.
off the line, right? If he was gonna hold a block, cool, but he could shed that block. Patrick Payton was that drop back, put his hands in the air, batted balls Payton. So, now that he doesn't have that on the opposite side, it's a whole different ball game with that D line. But the talent is clearly there.
Right.
So, when they talk about how good and talented that line is, I believe it. They just have to now go out there and prove it. Like again, this is going to be the litmus test right now for that team. How they bounce back, how Mike responds. Because I believe in Mike. I think he's a great play caller. I really do. Right. And if he does trust a little bit of what he saw from DJ those last couple of drives, I think Florida State will be all right. I'm off the ledge. I was on the ledge.
There's a lot of there's a lot of Nole fans already talking 8-4 and just they're jumping off the ledge, jumping off the ship, which is fine, But like Bree said, this will be a proven game. Probably the most dynamic runner at the quarterback position coming up on Labor Day. So I'm interested to see how that go. We've spent enough time on this game. It was week 0. A lot of funky things happened. I do want to shout out Ryan Fitzgerald, who was the best player on the team on the field for us. Kicked a 59-yarder and a 50-yarder. And just from where the kid came from, us bullying him, saying he should, not get on the team bus after games because we lost the NC State game because we couldn't kick a 30-yarder. Now he's kicking 59-yard field goals. So shout out to him.
How many times did we try to take that man's scholarship a couple years ago?
Every week, man. Every week.
Countless.
But shout out to Fitz Magic at this point,
Fitz Magic. That's wild.
Yeah. Breeze, did you want to touch on that SMU game, or your thoughts on that game before we kind of jump into this week's game?
Yeah, man. I thought the SMU game was a little weird. SMU was able to get a victory on the road. They played, I believe it was I know they played Nevada. Yeah, they played at Nevada. They were able to pull out a 29-24 victory, but it was funky looking for a team that you just joined the Power 4 now, coming out of the Group of 5. Everything we thought about the quarterback, Preston Stone was supposed to be that guy. Well, he comes out and throws a couple of picks early in the game. You're swapping quarterbacks in and out. Like, I don't know what that was about. It was clunky, and they pulled it out late. Shout out to RJ Maryland, the tight end, who's the son of former Miami great Russell Maryland. He was the best player on the field, man. So SMU's got to pull it together. The quarterback flopping, not a fan of it. I always believe you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks, and they're gonna have to play better. They want to do anything in the Power 4, in the ACC. ACC may not be SEC this year, but even still, what they put out week 0, that's not gonna fly, man. That's not gonna win you a lot of games at the Power 4 level.
How much weight do you put in week 0 games or even week 1 games? Because like I said earlier, you don't really know your team because you're playing against each other for 20 practices during fall camp.
Yeah.
And then you finally go get to hit somebody else. You don't know the similarities in the plays and things like that. How much weight do we put into these early games? Because there's no tape out on anybody right now.
Yeah, I mean, games are games, right? And there are certain things that you would like to travel regardless of where you are, but there is a transition period of sorts that takes place. I think there are sometimes communication issues that can rear their heads, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into the Miami, Florida preview and some of the other games we're going to preview. Communication issues, right? If you got new starters on the offensive line, how are they communicating on your back end, the DBs? Guys are still getting used to the communications and the helmet thing. So, yeah, at the end of the day, though, those games still matter, right? They're still in your record. And though we're in a 12-team playoff now where you can afford to lose a game or two, as long as you still win your conference, you're good. But that game does count. You don't get a preseason. So you got to go out week 1 and be ready to go. So it matters, yeah. But me personally, I don't overreact to them. I'm not going to say that based on what a team looks like week 1, this is who they are now. You don't know that. A team can look completely different in week 12 than they did in week 1. So I don't overreact, but they do matter.
Games are games, and it's funny you mentioned communication. Pumps, apparently he's frozen. So I don't know if we want to try to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
him back
He
in.
jumped in and out, and now he's back.
There he is.
I'm back now. Yeah, you got. I couldn't hear nothing y'all was saying. Everything was frozen. You was stuck on Fitz Magic.
It's
I
funny
said,
we're
no.
in the same house, but I guess
It was a
Nah,
you problem, not a us
it was it,
problem.
it was
right.
it was definitely me. What
But
was it?
yeah, we were just saying
ID10T?
that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, the ID10T error.
Uh,
There
we were
you
just
go.
basically saying, a lot of people try to overreact to week one game, even though games are games, but I don't think you have to overreact on week one games because your team will get better as the season progresses, or you would hope so. What are your thoughts on that before we jump into these games? Pump?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you would hope so, right? I mean, I think all good teams they're supposed to adjust. So the things that you saw, especially for us, the things that we saw, you would hope that you would have those in-game adjustments. Um, the fan base is what always trips me out the most, right? Like when you start wanting to call for people's heads and this is the worst thing we ever seen. This coach is trash. Like, bro, calm down. Like it's
Right.
it's it's really one game. Like that's when you understand why the term fan is short for fanatic. Like you guys say and do the most
Right.
idiotic stuff. Like, come on, it's okay, especially now. Like I was thinking about something, Breeze. How we were talking about how college football has completely changed to where before we're done. We lost to
Yeah.
Georgia Tech,
Yep.
our season's done.
One
BCS.
loss, you cook.
One
Yep.
loss and you're cooked. And now, like I have to even reprogram myself. That's 40 years of thinking. Well, actually, wait a minute. We actually could still make a seed for the. We could actually still win our conference and be in the playoffs. We're okay.
Yeah.
It's weird thinking that now because you want to jump off the cliff because
I
before
mean,
this season's done.
for years, we've been brainwashed as college football fans, and now we have to kind of recalibrate our thinking. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not over after one loss or two or three.
Yeah.
There's going to be a three-loss team in the playoffs. Um,
Not in the ACC, but yes,
Nope.
yeah, I mean a
they're
three-loss
gonna be
Ole
in
Miss.
the
Yeah,
ACC.
a three-loss Ole Miss will make it in there.
100%.
Yeah, so
3 loss
let's.
LSU, 3 loss Michigan. I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Breeze, let's rip this Band-Aid off, man. I know you've been itching to get your hands on these takes for this game, man. The
Mhm.
Hurricanes, the number 19 Miami Hurricanes, are headed into the swamp against Murder Mertz and those Gators.
It's murder.
Hey, man. And apparently they're gonna have their starting running back. It seemed like he would be out for week one. Montreal, he's good to
He's
go. He's listed as a starter on a depth chart that they released today.
he's on the
You
depth chart.
You mentioned on Twitter, they got the size. Pause. Out
Heavy
beside,
pause.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
they got the body type at every
Big
position
pause.
that you want.
Yeah.
So
That's still crazy.
guys, relax.
Hey, yeah. All right, bro.
It's not going. I say that to say it's not going to be an easy game. Like we've just got done talking about first games, week one games. Regardless of what the outlook is on the Gators season, that this tough schedule that
Mhm.
they have, a lot of people are, they're basically it's us against the world mentality because a lot of people don't expect them to have a successful season based on,
Right.
the schedule and what happened last
Ve-
year.
Vegas has them at 4.5 over under wins on the season. So Vegas is definitely feeding into what people think about this team.
Right, that's bulletin board material, and then you got an in-state rivalry that's or trying to be a rivalry. Florida State and Miami is the real rivalry, but you
We know that.
you know this is an in-state game, and the swamp is not to be taken lightly, especially in week one. Miami
Mhm.
is getting all the hype in this. They got a potential Heisman hopeful at quarterback in Cam. You got a stable of backs, probably one of the better wide receiving core in the country. Um, probably one of the better D line in the country. So a lot of the chips are stacked, towards Miami. What will it take for Miami to not perform underwhelmingly under the spotlight?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concerns is first of all, like we talked about, is week zero. In week zero, you get weird stuff, right? Miami has a lot of guys who've produced at the power four level, but they haven't played together, right? So you've got two new starters on your offensive line. What's your communication like between those guys? We know the offensive line has to move as a unit. If one guy is out of place, that can kill a whole play. What does that look like? Cam Ward, I believe, is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country, but he's playing this is his first game with these receivers. Those receivers are all productive. You've got two receivers who went for 800 yards last year. You got another receiver in Xavier Restrepo who went for 1,000 himself. But Kim's never played a live game with them. And you're on the road in an environment that's going to be loud. I would much rather play this game in week 8, where the fan base maybe has quit on the team. Maybe some guys are having issues in the locker room. But you're going in there week 1 where everybody has all the faith. The players are completely bought in still. Everybody comes out of camp feeling they're going to be an All-American. The fans are completely bought in still. It's probably going to be a sold-out game. It's going to be completely loud. So what is your communication like? And then the same thing on the defensive side. You're starting 2 new safeties. One has been in the program, but one's a transfer. What's their communication like? Are they going to be on one accord? I think your front 7 is not as big of a deal. You want to just win your one-on-ones as much as possible on the defensive line. I think we'll be able to do that. But the corners and the safeties, are they on the same page? Right? If one corner's playing the flat and the safety's supposed to be over the top and that safety's playing man, well, now you got a bust and that goes for a 40-yard touchdown. So those are my concerns about what this team, even though this team, I believe on paper is more talented, you can have those issues. And then one just issue that happens across the country is tackling week 1. NCAA rules said you can't do a lot of tackling in camp. So are they ready to tackle in space? Because I think Florida's receivers can make people miss in space. Eugene Wilson III might be the most talented receiver in this game. He will make people miss. If you aren't ready to tackle, you don't have good angles, you don't have good technique, he will make you miss, and now he's too many yards up the field. So if I'm, as a Miami fan, looking at this game, like those are the things that I'm like, all right, like what's that communication going to look like? Will guys be able to tackle? Will our technique be in place? Because that's how you lose games, right? That's how you end up losing a game where you might be the better team, but you just don't have a better day because of those reasons.
One of the things I'm looking for is how Cam Ward is going to handle this environment. He hasn't played on this stage before, and
I disagree. I'm sorry, bro. I hate to interrupt you. He played at Washington last year. That was a national championship.
Washington against Washington. I'm talking about the environment. Like the environment at Washington isn't the same as Gainesville. Are you serious?
Okay. So Josh Pate, who we referenced earlier, has been to all of the big venues. Okay. Went to a game at Washington last year and said it was one of the loudest places he's been. Their stadium is actually constructed to keep sound in and make it loud. Like the Swamp isn't like some unheard of place that nobody can go into, it's like, yes, it's loud, but we're not gonna act like the Swamp is 102,000 Kyle Field fans in the floors.
Okay, there's a difference between a stadium being loud and then fans being ruckus. Because you could go to Clemson and they're probably one of the loudest stadiums, but they're some of the nicest fans as well. You go to Gainesville, and I actually was talking to a Gator fan today that actually went to the school, and he's got like seats close towards the sideline. He said there's been times where students are spitting at the players. That's probably not happening at Washington. So just because the stadium is loud, it's also an intimidation factor when you're so close to the sideline, and then how ruckus those fans are. It's a difference between being loud and ruckus. I'm not saying it's the end all be it all, but you add that environment, and then what this game means to the state of Florida as well. I think it's a different level than playing at Washington. It's not the same thing.
If Cam Ward is rattled because fans are raucous, then he's got a lot of problems. He's not going to make an NFL. No, if that throws you off, if you can't focus, that's like basketball players shooting a free throw and the fans behind the stanchion are waving around and acting a fool. Like,
I'm not
You're a
saying he's going to
professional
be.
player. Like,
I'm not saying he's going to be rattled, but I think he's not. There's a lot of pressure on him this season. He hasn't had this level of pressure, and on top of that pressure, you're in that environment. Yeah, he played at Washington, but there wasn't no pressure on him. There's pressure. There's a lot of pressure. Like a lot of people want to see Miami do good things this year, and you add that pressure in that environment, it makes a difference. I'm not saying he will fold in the moment, but I'm interested. Yeah. I'm interested just to see how he would handle it.
I think the pressure for Cam Ward is just different, right? Because, and one of the things that I'm interested to see as a Miami fan for Cam Ward is, can he play within the system? The pressure at Washington State was, Washington State was, he had to be Mr. Everything. You were the Superman. Like, there's nobody else on that offensive roster that's going to play in the NFL. So he had to be Mr. Do It All. And you're on a roster now where you don't need to do that. So the pressure is different. Yeah, you're in a bigger program. You're going to play in bigger games. You're going to be on bigger stages. This is part of what you signed up for. You said you came to Miami for those reasons. Well, here you go. Now you got it. But it's just a different type of pressure. Now, how he will respond to that, I don't know. We haven't seen it yet. We won't know until the game it gets played. But if that's an issue for him, then we've got a lot of problems, right? Because you're going to play in, this is probably the toughest environment we'll play in on paper. But you're going to play a nationally televised game. You're going to go to places where people want to see Miami lose. Everywhere Miami goes in the ACC, there's a whole lot of folks ready and willing to show up to see them lose and hoping they do so. We will play at Louisville. That game is probably going to be a night game. It very well could be a sold-out game. Georgia Tech, if they continue to winning, we're going to play at Georgia Tech. That could end up being a night game. So if the moment is too big for him and the pressure of being the starting quarterback at Miami is too big, well, we got a whole lot more problems than just week one. And if he can't handle that, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Hey, Pump, if you're Sunbelt Billy, how are you approaching this game? Are you taking a page out of Georgia Tech's playbook and just trying to trying to burn clock and make this a shorter game? Because Miami could play it however you want to play it. They could ground and pound it, or they could spread it out and speed the game up. What's your approach if you're Sunbelt Billy?
The funny thing is, for me, I'm looking at Miami, and from year to year, I feel like when we have these conversations with Breeze, I don't know exactly what to expect from the Miami offense, except for really good play in the trenches, and you have weapons. But who's going to be your most dynamic weapon? You know, does that make sense? Like, where you know what you're going to get from certain teams, where they're going to gas you all day on the ground. They're going to run it down your throat. Doesn't matter. Then that opens up the passing game. Some people, they're just going to pass it 500 yards. It seems like from year to year with Miami, their offense has just kind of been a mystery, if that makes sense. So I don't know if they have anything on paper to sit back and be like, all right, well, we have to do this to stop Miami. We know they're good in the trenches, right? So they can run the ball. Have they been always effective running the ball? Nah. They have weapons at wide receiver. Have they always been great at utilizing those weapons? Yeah. Right? Tyler Van Dyke had one big year. So I think for him, it's a little, it's to me, it's kind of a mystery for Sunbelt. But I do think they should take a page out of that Florida State Georgia Tech game, in the sense of, let's just try to make the game you can't do the 7-7 possession thing, right? That was like the first time in 4 or 5 years. But don't give them opportunities. Try to shorten the game as much as you can, especially if you're not going to be that dynamic on offense, right? Again, we always say Graham Mertz wasn't the problem last year for Florida. So for them, I don't know what they do on offense, especially when you lose so many weapons. You lose your best running back, most explosive guy on offense. What do they do? Right. But yeah, I really don't know what they can do, because I don't know what the identity is of what you're going in to stop from Miami, except for just saying, okay, we need to stop Cam Ward for sure. So shut down the pass game, because he's athletic, but he doesn't want to run. Cam Ward's not a runner.
I mean, if I'm Sunbelt Billy, again, I would go back to one of the things I kind of alluded to. If I'm him, I'm looking to force Miami's DBs to tackle in space. And you look at how they played the game last year, Graham Mertz, I think 11% of his throws were 20 yards or further down the field, which means he threw a lot of short passes, a lot of throws, screens, pop passes, stuff like that. I'm doing that and saying, hey, look, maybe your D line is better than my offensive line. Maybe we can't just block you straight up, but can your DBs tackle in space? Right? If I throw a quick screen to Trey Wilson, is whoever is on that side as a corner, is he going to disengage off blocks? Can your safeties come down and consistently make those tackles? Me, if I'm Sunbelt Billy, that's what I'm leaning on. I'm forcing the DBs to tackle in space, and until they show me they can, I'm gonna keep testing. I'm going right at those corners. I'm going right at those safeties. We'll try to dial up our shots, max protect. If we have to chip Ruben Bain and Akeem Mezzador with a tight end or running back, maybe dial up those shots. But for the most part, I'm going horizontal. And I'm saying, show me that you can tackle in space, because if you can't, well, we got athletes too. Eugene Wilson in the open field, he's a problem.
I guess conversely, if I'm Mario, I'm taking those short passes away. Let me see if you can stretch the field, because you haven't proven to do so in previous years. We're going to stop the run, and we're going to force Grant Mertz to actually make deeper throws and see if he could. I'm going to press my corners all game. I'm going to get up in these wide receiver face and force them to run down the field. And I'm a live and die with that. So it should be an interesting game, though, man. Right now it's at 2.5, which I think is way too low. I think Miami.
Hey, stop that.
I said that last week, so I might let me stop. Let me stop.
Hey,
I don't want to jinx y'all. I don't want to jinx y'all.
In all honesty, it has the potential. I think who are we talking to that mentioned how bad the their secondary is for UF. They weren't good last year either.
No.
So if Cam's gonna come in there and rip it, that might be something too. Billy Napier got to figure out who's gonna stop that pass game, because they weren't good at it last year either. So Miami made a point to go out and get them a guy that can throw the ball, right, and get it downfield. If he starts doing that against Florida, it might be lights out early.
Yeah, I mean, really, the Florida defense, and they've changed the personnel. They brought in a number of different bodies who would be starters. They got some guys healthy who missed last season. They weren't good at anything on defense. They didn't stop the run very well. They didn't stop the pass very well. That defense got lit up in several games. Even the games they won, or some of the games they won, their defense still got lit up. So what does that look like, right? What does Joey Slackman at D tackle look like versus what you had last year? What does Justice Boone at DN look like versus what Princey Umamielen looked like last year? Is he any better in getting pressure on quarterbacks? They couldn't rush the passer. You didn't stop the run. Your DBs were barbecue chicken. Like, what does it look like? You brought in Asa Turner from Washington at safety. Is he an upgrade? Is he a better tackler? I think, Go ahead.
No, it's funny because I'm thinking about their DC. I can't remember his name, but he's like, we're going to be multiple on the front and multiple on the back. That's the issue. You can't be multiple on the front and on the back.
Yeah, I mean, but there's different personnel, right? I think Miami fans.
I think it starts with the DC.
Yeah, no, definitely the DC is a big piece of it. No, we back. You good? We got you back. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Florida just has some question marks. In theory, you assume guys get better, right? Another year in the program, Jason Marshall, former highly recruited kid. I think he was a 5-star corner out of Miami Columbus. He's now in his senior season. Is he better? Well, you hope so, but just because the guy comes back another year doesn't mean he gets better. Right. That guy, he got lit up last season, but maybe he does take that step, right? You get Shamar James back healthy, who blew his knee out in the Kentucky game. Maybe he helps fill those gaps so your run defense isn't so bad. You add Joey Slackman, who was the Group of 5 or the Ivy League Player of the Year or Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe he is disruptive in the middle. So now the middle of your defensive front doesn't get pushed around. It's just question marks, right? And you just don't know what those guys are going to be, which is why I think it makes this matchup interesting. And I'm fine with the 2.5 line, because there's some question marks on the Miami side because they have changes too, and you just don't know what it looks like week 1 at least. There's no proof of concept.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that before we kind of jump into predicting what this game is going to look like. Um, Obviously, you've mentioned this your secondary as probably your biggest question mark going into the season. Is there another aspect of this team, whether it's coaching? I seen Mario went out and hired a time management coach. Um, is he Breeze? You frozen? You good? Okay. Is there another area of this team where you're kind of
I'm here. I'm here. I hear you. I hear you.
where you're kind of questioning things outside of the secondary?
Yeah, as far as like roster build, outside of the secondary, not really, because while we did, there's a bit of turnover. There is a lot of consistency too, which I know sounds weird. The thing that I'm looking at with Miami is, or the thing that makes me hopeful is that a lot of it is proven production. Cam Ward has been a guy who throws for 3,500 yards at the P4 level, even with a subpar offensive line. Just be that, right? I don't need you to be anything. You don't need to be Joe Burrow. You don't need to be Lamar Jackson. Just be that guy who threw for 3,500 yards, 20 plus touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. Just be that. Damian Martinez, you ran for 1,185 yards last year. Just be that again. I don't need you to be anything different. You don't need to be Dalvin Cook, Ricky Williams. Just be that same guy. So while there's a lot of change, I think a lot of the new names that are in Miami's lineup, there are guys who have proven they can do it. We're going to start 2 new defensive tackles, Marley Cook and CJ Clark. Transfers who started last year. One started at NC State, one started at Michigan State. So you played against this level of competition before, right? So I don't think there's a lot of questions roster-wise. My questions are, what do they look like together? Because that's what we haven't seen. We haven't seen CJ Clark and Simeon Barrow playing next to each other. We haven't seen Michelle Powell, who transferred in from Washington, playing next to a Jaden Harris. So I don't have questions in terms of talent and ability. I have questions on what do they look like as a unit and how quickly can they gel.
Okay. Well, let's jump into it. Let's make our first prediction of week one.
Oh boy.
Pump, I'll start
Oh
with
boy.
you. How do you see this game going? And what do you got for the score?
Give me 28-10 Miami.
That's
That makes me nervous. Golly.
That's
They got
18 points?
18 points. There's too much.
From a 2.5 spread?
Yeah. For me, there's too many question marks for Florida. I've seen Miami lose games last year that, in all honesty, they didn't have business losing. Right. To me, it's almost like they're another Clemson last year. Right. There was games that Clemson played that's like, man, well, this game went to overtime, or they lost by a field goal, or a weird play here, and they could have won those games. I feel like there was a few games like that from Miami, and now they're returning that back with a better answer at quarterback than what Florida has. They have consistency at quarterback, but they got way too many questions for me. And we know what Miami is on both sides of the ball, the line of scrimmage. I think it's going to make a difference.
All right. I'm going to go 21-17 Miami. I think to kind of piggyback off of what Breeze is saying, I think the chemistry doesn't really gel as well as it should, but there's enough talent out there to kind of overlook that, at least for the first game, and then eventually you'll start gelling as the more games you play together against other teams. But there's you got a new quarterback, new running back, new DBs, new D linemen, so it's going to take a while to kind of say, maybe Cam Ward throws the out route differently to Restrepo in a game. He might figure that out in the second half or whatever. But I think Florida comes out hype. They probably take an early 10-3 lead, and then Miami takes off after.
I'm gonna go with Miami 24-20. So they cover just barely. I think Florida, same way. I think they will come out and probably grab a lead early. I could even see them being up at halftime, something like a 17-10 or 14-10 or something of that nature, because they will be completely juiced up. They'll have a lot of energy going into it. And sometimes it takes a little minute to settle into the game. Even with that Georgia Tech Florida State game, like both teams scored on opening drives, but then they kind of settled in a little bit. And it wasn't just marching up the field and scoring. So I think Florida will find success for sure. But again, in that second half, I think the talent disparity shows. I think the trenches make a difference. Montrell Johnson is listed as the starter. I know, right? Shout out
the
to
ghetto.
Montrell.
That's the ghetto Montrell Jordan.
Yeah. No, I think he'll play, but I think he'll be on a pitch count, right? It doesn't make sense to trot out the most proven guy on your offense who's going to be your bell cow back in a non-conference game to start the year, knowing what you got coming down the slate. So I think he'll play, but he'll be on a pitch count, which means, I'm not afraid of the backup running backs as a Miami fan. Trayon Webb has been there for a few years. He hasn't been anything special. You got some true freshmen in there. That's cool, but I'm not afraid of that. So I think Florida will find some success and maybe they jump out to an early lead. But in second half, I think the trenches matter, man. Like college football, a lot of times come down to who's better up front. And Mario has built this team inside out. And I think that'll show in the second half.
So hold on. You said 20. You said 21, 24, 21, Breeze?
I think it was 24-20 I landed on.
And you said what?
17-21.
Interesting. All right.
You writing it down? We got to keep track of our pick'ems this year.
Yeah, I'm gonna send out the pick'ems. We're gonna run that back this year.
All right. So, Breeze, what's the craziest thing? Because I know Florida fans are talking on Twitter. What's the craziest thing you've seen this week on Twitter from a Florida fan?
The craziest thing I've seen from a Florida fan, besides like ridiculous blowout score predictions, there was a guy a few accounts who posted a picture, I guess, of like the swamp at night, and like a bunch of camera lights are on, and I'm like, it's a 3:30 kick, bro, and like literally, I responded to, I was like, I hate when the sun sets at 3:30 p.m. Like it's not a night game
with the pulse meter in the corner. Is that the one you're talking about?
Like, this is all Cam Ward's going to see at 3:30, bro. If the sun is down at 3:30, we got some other stuff going on, bro. And I'm not worried about football if the sun sets at 3:30.
Y'all do realize that Florida fans have a notepad full of lies prepared if they win this game, right?
Oh, listen. Here's my thing about Florida fans. Hold up, real quick, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. This is my thing with Florida fans. Those people were trying to run Billy out of town at the end of last year. You ended last season on a 5-game losing streak. Now all of a sudden, you have full faith in this man again? Like what did he do in the last 8 months that he goes from you were trying to run him out of town and y'all are completely over him to now you have full faith and you're gonna blow the doors off of anybody? I mean, sure, Miami's a rival, but what about that team said you're going to blow anybody out?
That faith will go out the window after game one or after halftime.
I don't understand that. I don't understand that, man. Like Miami fans, we're bought in because look at the talent you brought in. You brought in, one of the better running backs in the country. You brought in one of the most productive quarterbacks in the country. You brought in guys who've proven production at a number of spots on the field. What did Florida bring in where fans are like, oh, Billy's got it this year. He figured it out. We're going to go out and win 9 games. Like, I don't see what they brought in. There's talent on that team, yes. They're not defunct of talent by any means. So Miami fans expecting a blowout. I think you're in for a surprise as well because they are a talented team and it's week 1. But I don't have any reason to look at like, man, this team is going to be so much better than last year. I think they will be better, but they're not going to be night and day from last year. They'll be competent, but they'll lose to teams that are better than them.
Hey, this is why games got to get played. Regardless of what's being said, games have to get played.
It's line it up season.
I did shoot a tweet out. Miami and Florida play. Somebody got to take an L, and somebody go get these memes. So I've been, Florida State fan been getting it all week. Somebody go get these memes.
Twitter is going to be hilarious one way or the other.
All right, let's move on. I got if you got any games to add to this, but I really only have 3 games that I want to touch on real quick before we kind of close it out. First one is number 1 Georgia against number 14 Clemson, who is Kirk Herbstreit's favorite to win the ACC. How do we see this game going, and who wins this game?
I'm gonna be honest. I haven't heard anybody talking about this game, and I think it's because we all expect one result. We all expect Clemson to lose this game. Again, kind of the same conversation that we had before about Clemson. If I'm looking at what you were last year, I'm looking at what you retained and what you added to your roster. I don't think it's enough to make this team completely take several jumps forward. And we know what Georgia is. Georgia hasn't lost a regular season game in the last 3 seasons. So that says that team is well built. They have depth. When guys leave, they simply replace them with other guys who are just as good or better. So I have nothing to believe that Clemson is going to go out here and beat a Georgia team who literally hardly ever loses. Like, they just don't lose very often in the last few years. They went 2 years without losing a game at all. They went back-to-back chips. Last year, they lose 1 game to Alabama. What has Clemson shown or done or added to that roster that says, we're going to beat Georgia week 1? And basically a home game, because Atlanta is all of 2 hours or 2.5 hours from Athens. Like, nah, man. Give me Georgia comfortably.
Are you buying the Clemson hype pump?
Am I buying the hype?
Yeah,
no.
Kirk Herbstreit having winning the ACC.
I don't listen to anything. I don't listen to clowns. So, come on now. Last person I'm going to listen to is Herbstreit. Georgia scares me. I'm not going to lie to you. They brought back almost that same, they brought back so much. They added some pieces. They got ETN, and I believe they're pissed off. I think they're pissed off because of how they went out last year.
They took it out on us.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that you need is a motivated Georgia team. So, yeah, Clemson's about to feel something. I think, what's the line on this one? 13 and a half?
I don't have it up. You got it up?
Yeah, I think the line is 13 and a half, over under 48 and a half. It might get nasty quick. And again, not gonna pretend like Clemson still doesn't have, talent. They still don't, they're still not a talented team. Georgia's just head and shoulders above a lot of teams, man.
Right.
So yeah. I don't even think it's gonna be close. That one might be done by halftime.
I'm with y'all. Dabo stayed away from the portal. Kirby is recruiting at a high level in high school, and he's supplementing his team with the portal. He went and got the best back out the portal, and he's got multiple number 1 recruiting classes. And like you said, he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. It's one thing for Georgia to be coming off of a national championship season and to be coming off of what they felt like they were slighted, as far as being in the playoff. And Kirby's using that as motivation. And I think that the fact that, a lot of people are propping Clemson up as a viable candidate to, play them tough. Kirby's going to prepare well for this game. And I think they're just going to be out physical across the board. They got a Heisman hopeful at quarterback. They've got everything you need in a national championship team. And I think Kirby and those boys are going to make a statement game 1. I don't think it's going to be close. Do we want to call scores around the horn? We got to put stuff on paper.
42-17 Georgia.
Sheesh.
Give me Georgia 33-17.
Give me Georgia 35-10. All right. Moving on. Number 7 Notre Dame versus number 20 Texas A&M. Texas A&M, they've got Duke's former coach, Breeze, what's his name? I need to do better with names.
Mike Elko.
Mike Elko.
Mike Elko.
His D coordinator actually just whooped up on us. His former D coordinator. But yeah, he's at Texas A&M now, and he's going against the number 7 Fighting Irish. Notre Dame, they did lose their quarterback, but they went ahead and got Riley Leonard from Duke, who might fly under the radar. He at the back end of his season last year, he kind of got hurt, couldn't put his full talent on display, and he's looking to kind of get back to where he was at Duke with Notre Dame, with a lot of better talent around him. Are we buying this hype as Notre Dame being the number 7 team in the country? Because
you already knew Punk's reaction to that, man.
I mean, what makes them the number 7 team in the country?
Those gold helmets.
They buy them.
They buy Rankins.
Look. This is what I'll say. I think Notre Dame, like Penn State, they're a good team. They're just not great usually. Rarely are they great. They're usually good, not great. They'll beat everybody they're supposed to beat, and they'll lose everybody they're supposed to lose to, typically. Now, do I think Riley Leonard brings a different dimension to this team? Yes. My issue or my concern for them is you were replacing both of your starting tackles, and then you just lost your starting left tackle. I don't know what else is there. Riley Leonard has the ability to run, but you don't want him to have to run. And Texas A&M lost talent in the portal. They kept a lot of talent out of that portal. One thing Jimbo didn't fail to do was amass talent at Texas A&M. He just didn't know what to do with it. He just didn't know how to put them in the right positions to win. So you got a Mike Elko, who used to be at Texas A&M, who manufactured a really, really good defense, who just made Duke competitive, beat Clemson week 1 last year. You give him that type of talent, I think you're going to be a little scary. And I think Notre Dame will be good, but you're going to Kyle Field. We're talking about environments. Kyle Field, 102,000 fans. It'll be rocking and crazy in there. I think that's just a tough spot for Notre Dame week 1, especially when, you have question marks yourself.
So you're calling upset week 1.
Am I wrong in that Texas A&M is favored? They're ranked lower. They're the number 20 team in the country, but Vegas has them as a 3-point favorite.
It's true.
I mean, I agree with all you said. We don't know much about Notre Dame. Riley Leonard, he's coming off of an injury, and you're not playing at home. That would help a little bit. You're going into one of the more tougher environments against a guy that's, when you think Duke, you don't think football, and he made Duke relevant with lesser talent, and you give him some of the best high school players. I think Jimbo had an all-time great class ever at Texas A&M.
The highest rated high school recruiting class ever.
All those guys aren't gone. So you give Mike Elko that, coming off of what he did at Duke. This is prime upset special. So I think Texas A&M could put it on them.
When you say put it on, what's your score prediction?
I'm gonna go 24-10. So not put it on. I mean, they'll pull away at the end.
Okay.
I'm gonna follow you guys. 21-14. Texas A&M. I think that we saw what Riley Leonard has the ability to do. I think that we're in a position with them the same way. Breeze is sitting here. He wants to look at what Cam's going to do. First time throwing to these guys. We saw with DJ. First time throwing to these guys. It's no different with Riley Leonard, right? This is first year with Notre Dame. To have him lose 2 of his guys are supposed to keep him upright. Texas A&M's defense wasn't that bad last year.
And you also have to, not to cut you off, you also have to think that Mike Elko knows Riley Leonard. He knows how to stop him.
Absolutely.
Coach.
Yeah. So give me Texas A&M by a touchdown in College Station.
Okay. I'm gonna roll with the Aggies 2017, and I got a hot take. If he stays healthy, Connor Wegman is my Heisman dark horse.
That's a spicy take.
Very
Connor
Hey,
Wegman,
extra sauce.
Heisman dark horse. Hey, a lot of what Riley Leonard was able to do at Duke, Connor Wegman has a lot of those same abilities, and he's a much better passer. Much better. When Connor Wegman was healthy, he put up some really good numbers. He's been lost to injury the last 2 seasons. If they're able to keep that boy on his feet, he's my Heisman dark horse.
All right, we'll keep an eye out for him. All right, let's move on to my final game that we should keep an eye on, and that's LSU, number 13 LSU versus number 23 USC. Breeze,
Bro,
what
I
you
don't know
got?
if you noticed, but we didn't. Real quick, we didn't plan this. People who watch this, we didn't plan this, and I've had every game teed up. I knew exactly which games. I mean, it's not hard to do this week.
Yeah.
We've been working together for a minute. As far as this game goes, I think both teams have a lot of question marks, especially at quarterback. Both teams will be starting a new quarterback. USC is going with Miller Moss. LSU is going with Nussmeier. They both look good in bowl games, but that's bowl games. This is not regular season. It's different. Ultimately, I'm going to roll with what I think is more proven and what usually travels. LSU has probably the best tackle tandem on the offensive line in the country. Though both of those tackles will probably be first or at worst second-day draft picks based on what they've been able to do so far. That usually travels. USC, the defense, actually every defense that Lincoln Riley has coached in his career has been god awful. And
Trash.
I do mean atrocious.
Hot garbage.
Hot garbage. So if that defense can't get stops, I'm gonna put blind faith in a Brian Kelly coach team. Brian Kelly, I think the stat is like he has not fallen short of double-digit wins in the last decade or some crazy number. He's like death, taxes, Brian Kelly winning double-digit games. So that usually means that his teams show up prepared. And you got to be something special, I think, usually to beat them. Not maybe to the level of a Georgia, but I just don't see a Lincoln Riley coach team having enough defense to be able to get a win against an LSU team. I just can't see it. I can't bank on Lincoln Riley, man. Brian Kelly, I don't think is a world beater either, but I'll take him over Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about Zach Branch. You know how I feel about wide receivers as a whole. I think Zach Branch, he's gonna have his imprint on this game. It'll be just exciting watching him. Every time USC is on TV, I want to watch either a receiver or an offensive player because they always feel a good offensive player. I like Deuce Robinson as well at wide receiver, but I can't name a guy on maybe Barry Alexander, but he hasn't made much impact. Yeah, but I think Kyron Lacey is the next LSU receiver in line to step up. I think he has a big year. Harold Perkins, I think he bounces back from. I think many may think that was a disappointing last season. So I think he bounced back. He'll be a first round draft pick. And if I had to pick a defense, I'm going with LSU. So it'll be probably a 2-touchdown win by LSU, I would say.
2 tutties, huh?
Yeah.
So LSU lost a lot of firepower on offense. I don't know if anybody noticed that. Just
they did.
Heisman quarterback, receiver, whatnot.
Two of them.
I still believe
that.
I still believe that between you, me, and Breeze, we probably can still maybe get 40 yards a game against that USC defense.
Just throw it to me in the flat. I'll get you 5.
I'm there. I'm there all day. So yeah, obviously advantage LSU defense. I think also advantage LSU run game. If you can keep it away from USC having time to just get that high-powered offense out there, do it. I think Brian Kelly can do that. I also think that Mr. Riley's under the gun. I think Lincoln Riley got to show something, right? You got to prove that he can do it without your Heisman quarterback. You got weapons. Did you do anything to improve that defense? Which I think we all know the answer is no. You don't care. If I can go out there and score 50, cool. But now go out there and score 50 without Caleb. I want to see if you can do it. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. Give me LSU. Give me LSU 21-17. I think they neutralized.
I didn't give a score. I'm gonna give it a little more offense than I give in other games. Give me LSU 28-21. 28-24. 28-24 LSU.
I said 2 scores. 21-31. Yeah, 21-31. LSU.
I'm trying to figure out where y'all getting all these LSU points from.
I think Nussmeier will be fine. I think I think Kyron Lacey is a solid receiver. I think their tight end is pretty good too.
We're talking about USC's defense, so you don't have to figure out much of where the score is going to come from. They're just going to give it up.
There's that too.
Fair enough.
There's that too.
All right. So before we close it out, do we have any other games that I'm looking at this West Virginia Penn State game? I hear a lot of people talking about West Virginia. Are we concerned about that game as far as being competitive?
Yes. I think that game will be competitive. West Virginia low
too, isn't it?
It is. It is in Morgantown. And shout out to Pat McAfee and them folks. But West Virginia was sneakily a good team down the stretch last year. Garrett Green was a quarterback that not a lot of people talked about because not a lot of people care about West Virginia football. But if Penn State can't score again, if that offense is still anemic, and you find yourself in a squabble with a West Virginia team at home who will be completely juiced, I know that that stadium is going to be packed out and crazy too because there's nothing else to do in Morgantown anyway. You might find yourself in a bit of a squabble, man. I think West Virginia is better than folks think they are. Nobody really is giving them a lot of love, but Penn State better show it ready to play. I think it's going to be a game.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on it. How do we think Deion do this year? over under 7 wins.
Under.
Way under or just slightly under?
No, he'll win.
Golly. Hold on, let me pull the schedule.
Yeah, let's pull the schedule.
Y'all know the schedule? All right. Yeah, okay, so here's the schedule. They start with North Dakota State. They play at Nebraska, at Colorado State, Baylor, at UCF, Kansas State, Arizona, at Arizona, Cincinnati, at Texas Tech, Utah at home, at Kansas, and then at home against Oklahoma State. So from going down the line, 1, 2, 3.
You win North Dakota State.
I got them at 6 losses off the top. At UCF, I think is a loss. I think that's their like space game or whatever they call it. So at UCF, they lose to Kansas State, they lose to Arizona, they lose to Utah, they lose to Kansas, they lose to Oklahoma State. That's 6 losses. 5 ranked teams, I'm calling 6 losses. This means you gotta win all those other ones, and you got a coin flip. Nebraska's gonna be the difference between a bowl game and not, in my opinion.
And I like
if they can beat Nebraska. True freshman, we got to see. I like Shador a lot. I like Travis Hunter a lot. If they can win that game at Nebraska, then they make a bowl game. Otherwise, they're 5-7.
It's an improvement. They coming.
An improvement. Real slowly.
They still coming.
That canal,
it's real slow.
That Canal Street Louis Vuitton luggage ain't looking so hot, man.
Man, Deion gone after this year. He losing Travis and his son. I'm out of there.
Yeah, he might be out.
All right. Anything else on college, man? Who wins the Heisman, Breeze?
Who did I go with? I think I was lazy, and you know what? I think I said Carson Beck before. That's a lazy take. Give me Dylan Gabriel.
Oh.
Oregon's gonna put up points this season.
That's actually a nice pick. I can see him getting. I can see him getting a lot of push just because now Oregon is playing in the tougher conference. I can see that. If Oregon goes up there and actually plays the way everybody thinks they can play, that's not a bad pick.
I think they're gonna put up a lot of points.
I like Arnold Jackson out of Oklahoma. He's a sleeper.
First year starter though. That's my concern with Jackson. He's got a really good receiving core with him, but redshirt freshman, I'm a little concerned about calling Heisman for him.
All right, we'll see. Pump, you got anyone?
I don't think it's a lazy pick saying Carson Beck. Like I think you were knocked out for a second, Breeze. But we're talking about Georgia-Clemson. Georgia scares me. I think they got a lot of stuff they want to prove, which is ridiculous if you think about it. But I think they're a pissed off team after last year. And if you look at the numbers that Carson Beck already put up, sky's the limit for that team. I can see him going out there and just lighting everybody up.
I can see it.
All right. We'll see. Games got to get played.
Games got to get played.
Games have to be played. No matter what's said, games will have to be played. And the beautiful thing about college football is every week you're going to get something you didn't expect. So I'm looking forward to game day. I'm looking forward to watching all these games. And one thing I know as a Florida State fan, one of these teams going to lose between Miami and Florida. So either way, I'll find some joy until Monday night.
All right, real quick, because they couldn't join, but they wanted to send in their notes. Obviously, Doc, who friend of the show, she's got Canes winning. That's her pick. She said, the skeptics who are concerned about his game day calling, well, now he's got a game management coach. So you can throw that out. Shaw has a bold prediction that the Gators win 31-30, but Miami makes the playoff, which you calling 31-30 tells me that you're not that confident you're calling a 1-point win.
Yeah, that's all heart.
I gotta say we win, but
yeah,
I don't have a lot of reasons to believe it, so I would say we win by 1.
Go back to Doc, what she said. Is she taking a shot at Mike?
No, a lot of fans are the whole Georgia Tech thing, where Mario at the end of the game, he mismanaged the game and stuff like that. So now he has a game management coach.
Oh, I got
who will help him like in those moments, like when you should take timeouts and how you should manage the clock at the end of games and during tight moments. So
I meant to ask you that off air, but I guess I'll ask you that real quick. How do you feel like Mario is trying to just alleviate a lot of the duties as a head coach and just strictly trying to just be a CEO coach to where he doesn't have to? Because isn't that part of your role as the coach to kind of manage the game? Like, I wouldn't see that as something you want to take off your plate. You want to be in control of how the game goes, I would think.
Well, like he said, ultimately the final decision comes down on him. So they asked him, like, who's the coach? And he's like, I won't name him. He's like, at the end of the day, it's on me. So he is a CEO coach, though. He doesn't call plays, offense or defense. He's never called plays. He's a CEO. So this is part of it. What I took it as was him eating his crow and saying, I wasn't good enough as a head coach during game days. So I recognize that, and I know I need to do something different. That's how I took it. I took it as a positive thing to say, because he could have been like, yeah, no, we're good. I know what to do. We got it. But for him to admit that he has hired somebody or he's assigned somebody that role, to me, that's an admission of fault, which I'm cool with that. Like you should feel like something needs to change because clearly something was out of line. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a positive thing, and hopefully, we don't see any late game debacles, and this person is good at their job, and we can close games the right way. If you want to win big, and it's supposed to be a win big year, you got to be able to close games out.
I tell you what, we could have used the game management coach week 0 because I felt like Mike lost track of that game. Like he didn't realize you're only going to get 7 possessions until it was too late, but that could play a big role, especially with the rule changes where the clock is moving a lot more faster. You have the 2-minute warning. So I think you see a lot of faster games. And, that might be innovative where a lot of teams look into someone managing, like keeping an eye on the flow of the game and kind of managing that aspect of it. Because Mike said he's never been a part of a game where you only have 7 possessions.
Real quick, how much do you guys think we're going to actually notice the change of actually having the comms and the helmets for the season? Do you think you will actually be able to visually see it on the field?
So my thought was, I think this is going to expose some coaching staff. There are some coaching staffs and some coaches out here who are rumored to be chronic sign stealers. And that kind of goes away with this. So if you've been living on, having a Connor Stallions in your organization or in your program, somebody who's really good at stealing signs, well, a lot of that could go away now. And now you just got to coach. Now you got to be able to just straight up call plays or just have better players. So if you've been banking on that, I think I'm interested to see if some coaches all of a sudden don't look as good as they've looked before in their jobs, because before they had the ability to have the leg up on folks.
Or you could just say it don't work, and then the other team can't use it, and then they're going back to sides. Because I just found out today that Georgia Tech said their headset wasn't working, so we couldn't use ours in the second half.
Well, you can see, Haynes King kept putting his hands over his ears, and he said it, but he's like, I can't hear. So
that's the crowd.
I think teams are
that's
prepared
not
to
your
revert
headset.
back to it. Well, not if it's not working. If it stopped working, which means y'all have to stop using y'all's. I mean, they go out. I mean, NFL coaches have said that. Like at times they go out, and you have to revert back to signaling in calls.
We'll see.
But I think it's gonna be interesting. Yeah, we'll see.
All right. If we don't have anything else, it's been another week of the one and only Somebody Said podcast, the official sports podcast of diehard college fans. We love college football on this show. If you haven't noticed, get used to it. It's that time of season. NFL is right around the corner. Breeze, are we doing the fantasy league, or what are we doing?
Yeah, we're gonna do the fantasy league. I need to get off my keister.
All right. Well, NFL's right around the corner. Week 1 of college should be interesting. As always, the man at the bottom of the screen is the one and only Pumpy Johnson on the 1s and 2s. You don't have a drop. You can't cheat this week.
Listen, next time, we go with the bags, and we go full regalia.
The man to my top left is the one and only South Beach Dade County Breeze.
I'm back on that road, baby. back on that road.
Turnpike Breeze.
Alligator
back on that alley. I'm back on that alley, man. Go Canes.
Sleepy and all. Eyes wide open, but you sleepy.
Go Canes.
There it is. And I'm up. Peace.